good morning. I'd like to say that it's my pleasure to be here, so thank you, Cindy and Bonek, for the kind invitation, and also thank you very much for the vision to host this event and to welcome you very warmly. I'm not sure, unlike UNWTO, how familiar everyone is with the European Travel Commission, so I will start with a brief presentation of the organization and of what we do. In short, the European Travel Commission is a non-profit organization, and we are responsible for the promotion of Europe as a tourist destination, mainly to long-haul markets. Our members are the 33 national tourism boards, including Visit Finland. In total, we have 25 EU members and 8 others, such as Switzerland, Iceland, Turkey, and so on. Some facts and figures. ETC was actually established in 1948 with funding from the Marshall Plan after World War II. So we are a quite old organization already. Regarding budget, we are financed through membership contributions, and currently we are also financed by the European Commission thanks to an ad hoc grant which is called Destination Europe 2020, but I will come back to this later on. Strategy. Central to our strategy is the importance of stimulating competitiveness and promoting the development of sustainable tourism and raising awareness and interest of Europe as a tourism destination in long-haul markets. ETC does this mainly by initiating marketing activities, and important to mention maybe is that we see this from a European perspective. So it's not our goal to duplicate the role that our National Tourism Board members already do for their countries. Also important is that our choice of activities is mainly based on prior market research. Coming back to the grant and the cooperation with the European Commission, Destination Europe 2020 is a joint initiative of ETC and the European Commission that aims to design a long-term strategy to promote Europe as a tourist destination. Currently, we focus on the US and Canada as mature markets, and two emerging markets, which are China and Brazil. Maybe a little bit of detail. The first grant of €1 billion was for an 18-month period, which started in October 2012. We are currently very happy to be in the second phase already, and as this is, as the name states, Europe Destination 2020, we hope, of course, to continue this and continue with a long-term strategy for Europe. In fact, this initiative is one of the Commission's actions to consolidate the image and profile of Europe as a high-quality and sustainable destination. And in a broader sense, it's important to enable European tourism to continue to develop in a competitive and a sustainable way, in accordance actually with the Europe 2020 strategy and the Lisbon Treaty. Why this is important, I'll give briefly just a few figures on tourism in Europe. I think it's widely acknowledged already now that Europe is the world's #1 tourism destination, with 563 million international tourist arrivals in 2013. Europe holds a market share of almost 52%. It's also worth noting that in particular long-haul markets contributed significantly to the growth of inbound tourism in Europe. Mainly the US is one of the important markets, but also emerging markets currently as Russia, for example. However, the European tourism industry is facing increasing global competition from emerging markets, and UNWTO forecasts in its publication Tourism Towards 2030 that especially destinations in Asia and the Pacific will benefit from the expansion of intra-regional travel and will gain most of the new arrivals in 2013. Consequently, the most visited regions at this stage, such as Mediterranean and Southern Europe, will be replaced or might be replaced by 2013 by new destinations in Asia and the Pacific. From a global perspective, there is opportunity for growth as UNWTO forecasts 1.8 billion international tourist arrivals by 2013, which is double from the amount in 2010. The way these international tourist routes will be distributed varies greatly, and I think there is still some speculation there. It can be explained by key trends in the global tourism sector, such as I mentioned, the increase of intra-regional travel, but I think maybe this will lead us too far. So, maybe a new world order by 2013. It is a likely scenario if Europe doesn't take any concrete actions at this stage. In order to remain the world's #1 tourist destination, I think Europe must respond to the shifting patterns in global tourism, but we shouldn't not capitalize only on the potential of the emerging outbound travel markets. We should also ensure the development of sustainable tourism in Europe. And sustainable tourism is understood to encompass not only the region's lasting economic benefits, but also we should take into account the stakeholders' responsibilities linked to social, cultural, and environmental impacts. Among the 3 dimensions, I think tourism in Europe is often discussed in terms of the beneficial economic terms. In Europe, the tourism sector contributes directly to 12 million jobs, which is 3.1% of total employment and of European GDP. So, to make this concrete, this is more than the impact of mining or higher education or even chemical manufacturing. So it is a very important contribution of tourism that we should take into account. Furthermore, WTTC also emphasizes that employment in tourism is important for special groups such as women, such as youth employment, which is a critical factor in some southern European countries, for example. Regarding the social dimension of sustainable tourism, usually this is mentioned in regards to safeguarding social cultural authenticity of the host community. But on the other hand, we should also ensure that Europe is a responsible European sector. And I would like to single out a few special groups, such as people with disabilities. According to the World Health Organization, an estimate of 1 billion people in the world suffer from a sort of disability in a very broad sense. And that is actually 15% of the population, so this is a quite huge amount of people. And it is a segment with increasing significance, and it calls for the design of a universal accessible industry regarding to tourism. Aging of the population. Around the world, countries are facing the aging of the population, and currently we have figures of about 25% of the population. And these people they're equipped with an adequate purchasing power. They also have the time, they're available to travel, so it's also a very important market to tap for tourism. On the other hand, I think the tourism sector should also design special products for this. We need to adapt, we need to welcome these people and integrate them in tourism product. And finally, considering Europe's vast offering, I think we also have the potential to offer a meaningful experience to tourists with all kinds of budgets. And this is something we should take into consideration as well. Safeguarding Europe's position as a world's #1 tourist destination also means that we should preserve the environment. Although this is not ETC's main core business, it is important, of course, to mention, as the quality of the environment, both natural and man-made, is essential to tourism. But I think it's relevant to say that tourism and the environment have a very complex relationship, as tourism involves many activities that can have opposing impacts on the environment, especially all the infrastructure, general infrastructure such as roads, but also specifically for tourism such as hotels, etc. And of course, these negative impacts in the end will gradually destroy the environmental resources which tourism actually depends on. I'll just quickly go through a few things, such as water resources. I think this is one of the most critical resources, and tourism tends to overuse this resource, especially in some drier areas like the Mediterranean, which are a very huge tourism destination. Because of the hot climate, the tendency of tourists to use more water when they're on a holiday than they would do at home. This can actually amount to amounts of 400 and over liters a day, which is about double of what local people would use. On the other hand, to be very positive, we do believe tourism has the potential to create beneficial effects as well. And it's been mentioned before as well by my colleagues. I think raising awareness, for example, is one important factor to which tourism can contribute. Also, the size and the reach of the tourism sector means that even small changes within the industry, their effect is quite huge. Also, the sector of tourism is a very multi-sector, so we are connected to numerous other sectors, and I think we can be an example to other sectors as well if we can stimulate changes. Nevertheless, I think it's valid to say that the sector still has quite a few challenges ahead, especially when it's reconciling long-term economic growth with social and environmental contributions. Something that might speed up this process is changing consumer patterns. Tourists are becoming, or it's not just tourism, I think, I believe in general people are becoming more conscious of the impact they have, and they are looking for alternatives to the tourism that they know right now. There have been some surveys to demand of sustainable tourism. For example, Visa and Pata, the Pacific Asia Travel Association, they conducted a survey, and they found that Chinese people, for example, have a preference for environmental friendly tourism and cultural immersion programs as well. I think there's a classic example that we've learned from one of our studies, that the Chinese people, they're always very wondered by the blue sky, for example, they see in Europe, which is very common to us, even if it's rather cloudy and grey. They are still quite amazed, as for example in Beijing, pollution is a huge problem for them. So sometimes we need to focus on the market and see how people perceive Europe, how they perceive sustainability as well, to get a clear view on this. And there is also evidence to suggest that tourists actively seek environmental and culturally differentiated destinations. They're willing to pay more. I think we already saw the example of Costa Rica, for example, which aims for these types of groups. However, despite the positive feedback, I think it's also important to be realistic. There are surveys, but none of them actually shows that sustainability has a great impact in choice of bookings. I think the most important reasons for people to book a specific destination are still accessibility, the main attraction of the destination, weather, climate, and price. and they usually still prevail above sustainability. Is there a demand for sustainability? I want to refer to a study which was conducted by the University of Luzern, and it was a study in different steps, but the first goal of this study was to learn about tourists' understanding of sustainability, because everyone talks about sustainability these days, but what does it mean to tourists? How do they perceive it? And these were the most important results that they got out of the study. So ecological attributes, mainly water and energy, were things that came up with the respondents. Also waste management. Regarding social attributes, was, as mentioned here already as well, involvement of the local community, and economic was a very important one as well. Regional employment, as we've been seeing, regional economic well-being. So this is how the respondents perceive sustainability regarding travel. The second question was, how important is sustainability when booking? And the result is a bit disappointing. As you can see, it's quite to the bottom of this list. And for most countries, it was actually the second last or the last, if they have to rank in importance what they were looking for. I think only Brazil and Russia were a bit special in this case, as they ranked 4th and 5th respectively, which also indicates there might be a difference depending on the market, but this might also be just related to the group of people they interviewed. A last survey I might like to mention is the Tour Operators Initiative for Sustainable Tourism Development, and this was also a survey on analysis and the outlook of the demand of sustainable tourism. And here also one of the key factors was that price and quality price are still the main decisional factors. So in general, these studies do not offer evidence for sustainability to be important in booking decisions. And I think there is still a lot of market research necessary to really get a good view on this. Yes?
Yeah, I just want to take issue with your statistics there, because I think it was the second and third or third and fourth on the, if you could just go back one. Local culture and landscape, they're absolutely absolutely sustainability, 4 and 5. So if the question is asked in the right way, actually sustainability will be right up near the top there.
As well as accessibility.
Yeah.
It's part of sustainability.
But accessibility in this.
So hearing, sorry, just let me finish. Hearing you say that actually there isn't much of a demand for sustainability amongst consumers, it's really worrying because you're a powerful organisation with a really broad agenda, but actually it's right there on those results.
To be honest, we haven't done any, unfortunately, research to the demand of sustainability. It comes up in the perception of
But do you see what I'm saying? It really depends how the question is asked.
yes, but I think
Because
in this
the general
case,
public don't have a very good understanding of the term sustainability. So if it's asked in isolation, you'll get one response. If it's asked as part of local culture, is local culture important to you, is landscape important to you, is experiencing local food important to you, when it's asked with a little bit more sophistication, it actually puts very high up consumer choices.
yes, but I do think you have to launch the question as very objective. If you will explain, you will steer a little bit in the answer you would like to hear, which I think is, but I think it's a valid point, especially for local culture. Accessibility, I think in this case, we need to understand in the point how accessible is the destination, not in is it welcome to as an accessible destination for people with disability. So I think accessibility in this case is interpreted in another way. But for local culture, that's a very good point actually, yeah. as I said, unfortunately we haven't had any specific research regarding the amount of sustainability, although I do think it's a very valid point, especially for ETC, as we try to focus on marketing activities on prior research. One of the achievements of the first stage of our grant with the Commission was the identification of visitors' perception of Europe in the 4 markets that I've mentioned. And as you can see, environmental friendly is one of the points that was raised. Also authentic, and this goes to authentic local culture, which is again very entwined with sustainability. On the other hand, there are some barriers as well, such as visa, for example, which is one of the unfortunately ongoing problems. But in general, we learned that potential visitors seek inspiration, and they are drawn to Europe by the amount of experience they can have, rather than the amount of destinations they can visit. And in this case, pan-European teams that stand out in this context are, for example, cultural roots, gastronomy, heritage, health and well-being, religious tourism, teams like this, rather than specific destinations. And for us, gastronomy has been one of the first pan-European teams that's been selected to initiate the program. Tasting Europe is a website that was launched in February this year, and it actually combines an overview of all the EU members with their local produce, some recipes, some events, some routes as well related to culture as well, and food. So I think it's one of the themes which is very specific and very important to Europe, as gastronomy is one of the main attractions, and it is also a good way to include a sustainable promotion. Towards a sustainable tourism destination, with consideration to the mandate of the European Travel Commission, I have to emphasize that our means are rather limited, as we do focus on the promotion of Europe as a destination. However, at the core of our strategy is the stimulation of competitiveness and the promotion of sustainable growth of the European tourism sector. And I think Europe must emphasize the diversity of its natural scenery, its culture, its history, its quality of life, its safety, and in this way we can stimulate demand for European tourism products. On the other hand, Europe also has to protect its product. If our destination, Europe, isn't protected environmentally, socially, culturally, and economically, in the end, visitors won't want to come and visit Europe. It's as straightforward as that. And the European Travel Commission, as I said, it's an old organization. We are currently looking for some modernization, mainly to open the organization up to the private sector as well, as we've been very much secluded organization. But also we are aware that sustainability is something that should get more attention within our organization. And this is why I'm here today. This is why we are open for questions, discussions, but also here to listen to my colleagues, to engage with Silvia Bardone in a further collaboration on sustainability in general. And I'm personally very excited that we will get this chance. So I'm looking forward to it, and I think we have a good future ahead.